Welcome to Mindshifters Radio. Delighted that you're with us. And today is, it's April the 10th, Thursday. Another week almost worked through. And we are ready to step into the next level. We're working through and looking at what so far has been unpublished for us, a 14-page Power Person Worksheet. And this is a worksheet that back in the early days, i.e. for the first 20 years of doing this work, we had a one-page worksheet. And then as a result of the Codependence to Interdependence online intensives, which are available as a self-study, which you can purchase if you want to take your work to the next level. There are 90 hours of video in that series. Out of that came the expansion from a one-page sheet, which we'd used for 25 years, to a 14-page sheet. And what we're looking to do is to really break down, because this is my offering, and the reason why this is such a key and so important is that this dynamic called the Power Person dynamic literally runs the world. When people are under stress, if someone is ultra stressed and they're doing crazy, here's what you can ask. You can ask that person, how did it feel when your power person did that to you? And they'll be able to go right back and find exactly when that happened. This dynamic runs the world. The reason it is, virtually every other worksheet that we have is a single page. But this one is 14 pages because until you go in and break down the dynamics of the power person, it's not going to be undone. It becomes the root of our personality. It is by definition a multiple personality disorder. If you measure people by the behaviors that they do, and there are only three behaviors that someone under the influence of the power person dynamic will do, and that is when there's little or no stress, they'll do whatever they did to get along with their power person. People will say that's one personality. Oh, he's Mr. or Ms. Nice Guy. Then when stress starts to build, they'll move into doing what they did to resist and survive with their power person. And so if that becomes, if their dynamic with their power person was to become snarky, then they become Mr. or Ms. Snarky. Or maybe their dynamic when stress started to build was to move into going quiet. If you've been in a relationship with somebody that's normally talkative and out there, and all of a sudden when stress starts to build, they shut up, clam up like a clam, don't say a word. Alternate personality. What happened? Why are you so different? This is an alter personality. And then when one becomes ultra stressed, they will do what their power person did to them that they hated the most. We tend to have multiple power persons, and the way you can tell who your key power person is in regard to any particular issue in your life, i.e., some people have one power person around money, another power person around work, another power person around relationships. So you can tell who your key power person is in any given area of your life by whose behavior do you copy. And so where we left off yesterday was looking at the direct power person messages. When somebody gives you, a message based on, or someone's living out of a dynamic based on a direct experience, that's one type of power person. But there's power person message. A second dynamic is a passive power person dynamic. And that is, it doesn't involve necessarily a message received from the power person directly, but it's a message activated from within, perhaps an inherited power person dynamic, by a situation in which a limiting conclusion and behavior is reached in one's own mind in response to that situation. So let's say an emergency occurs and the internal response due to an experience, a lack of knowledge or unpreparedness, let's say you got a child of 4 and the power person doesn't have to say a word, just needs to look at them, maybe administer to them the breath, like, the breath that implies what's wrong with you. Why are you so incompetent? Well, gee, I'm 3 and I don't have a clue what's going on here. But the internal conclusion, the passive power person message that one generates for themselves in that situation would be something like, I'm incompetent in emergencies. And of course, there's no such thing as an incompetent child of 3, but if they were expected, a lot of times parents expect, gee, I showed you once, why don't you understand how to do this? And then the pressure builds. The power person's putting the pressure on, and the stress goes up for the child. Get this done. Do this right. You'll only survive. Remember, survival is one of the key elements of this power person dynamic, becoming part of what's going on in the mind. So at this stage in the worksheet, at this step, what we're looking to do is to name who the power person is. Who is it that you're working with here? So we're on step 3A in the worksheet. And so in the situation, you look at the behavior you're doing, you look back at who did that behavior, and probably you're going to be saying to yourself, I really don't want to be doing this. And the question you ask yourself, when, as in this situation, this starts us up and the chips are down, whose behavior am I replicating in response to my state of elevated stress? So often, and usually it is a parent, although not always. So the acknowledgement here now at this stage in the worksheet is to recognize this person is a power person for me, perhaps one of many. Then on to step 4. My mind, my perceptual system, is meant to be fueled by love. When a situation occurs or a goal activates something in me based in fear or hostility, then my automatic decision system kicks in, and my perceptions, decisions, and behaviors are they're fueled by the non-being mind, and can only reflect the dissociated fear and or hostility-based content locked into my memory bank, locked into this tissue structure. And when we refer to carbon-based memory, we're referring to the fact that literally, in terms of what you call your physiology, every energy that passes over the senses, is stored holographically in every cell, including the sperm and the egg, by the way, so that those dynamics are passed from generation to generation. So in a situation where this sort of thing occurs, that's when we step into the pseudo solutions. So stress is up, chips are down, power person dynamic is locked in. Now the automatic decision system feeds to me whatever's stored in carbon-based memory based upon my experience with the power person. So that's the list of pseudo solutions. And so at this stage in the worksheet, you want to look at that list and determine which pseudo solution you're using in order to achieve survival, because this always goes back to, that's one of the components of installing a power person dynamic in someone's mind, is there is a survival element, at least survival element for the child to get to the point where their energy field opens and they absorb these dynamics from the power person. So you want to look at the list of detailed pseudo solutions as are projected from carbon-based memory. And, we went over those the last day or two. I'm just going to quickly run through them. If I could just figure this out, number 1. Number 2, fighting or winning. Forgiving them or myself, that is letting them or myself off the hook, which of course is not forgiveness at all. But according to carbon-based memory in the world, that's what forgiveness is. If I could fix myself or I could fix them, if they or I could just be good enough, these are the pseudo solutions. And the thing to understand is once you determine which pseudo solution you're using, it will never work. It will never produce the result that you want to produce. I was talking to someone this morning. They called me about a business person that they knew who was having some challenges in their business and described how all their lives they would get to this particular point in terms of success and, getting things together in their lives, and then it would crash. And they were like, well, what should I do? What should I offer to them? And my feedback was, unless you have forgiveness, the world's got a million pseudo solutions. We identified, I think, 14 or 15 over the last day or two. But none of those apparent solutions will ever produce the result of taking you back to the truth of who you are. And that's the only resolution there is. So ultimately, the tool that is, I'm going to say 1000% required. Sometimes people fall into an accidental situation where they might be able to forgive or remove an unconscious reality, an unconscious dynamic. But the only way I know of in 50 years of developing this work, and I've looked at everything that's come down the pipe, the only way I know to consistently, persistently remove the false and make room for the true is by collapsing the perceptual construct of your mind at any given moment, bringing love present to the underlying dynamic and dissolving that underlying dynamic. And that process is called forgiveness. Without forgiveness, you look at the mess of the world. You look at the hate, the rage, the fear, the stupidity, the viciousness, the violence, the just absolutely crazy stuff that goes on. Starvation, divorce, war. Why? How did humans, creative love, get this way? One reason and one reason only. They do not have the tool with which to remove the underlying dynamic of this behavior that is violence or what have you, that is replicating what the power person did to them. They don't have the tool to remove it. So this person was talking about, well, if I do this philosophy, that book, this philosophy, it's like, I don't care. Go send them to anything you want. Have them try to figure it out in their minds. That's the number one pseudo solution. If I could just figure this out, and it's not going to change the core of their lives. One tool and one tool only will do that. And the fact that genius of 2,000 years ago of this man Yeshua that brought forward, that understood how to collapse the constructs of the mind, which is where these pseudo solutions show up, and how to drop into the root of the trauma behind those pseudo solutions and dissolve it, is forgiveness, and it is the key. So the next power person, or pardon me, pseudo solution, again, I'm just going to go over them quickly, is to fix them or fix myself, control them, control myself. If they or I were just good enough or could be enough, they're all basic messages from the power person. The first message that most people get that they have to confront all their lives is the power person passes on the message that was given to them. You're broken. There's something wrong with you. You'll never make it. And until that dynamic's forgiven, then why is this happening to me again is the name of the game. Sooner or later, that unconscious dynamic, unless it's directly confronted and removed, is going to run everyone's life. Just take a look at the insanity going on. We are the richest nation in the world ever. And look at the hate and rage and crime. Just take a look. Why is it there? Talk to virtually anybody that's connected with what we might call decency or goodness. Talk to them and they'll say, no, I never wanted to do that, and I never want to do that again. But when the stress is up and the chips are down, what do? They do it again. Why? Because it's in there. What's the solution? Get it out. How do you get it out? With forgiveness. You don't get it out by being nice. You don't get it out by trying to fix yourself. The next pseudo solution, if I could just find someone to love me, which really means approve of me, Or if I could just find somebody who would follow all the directions I give them, all the goals I have, then I would have somebody that I love. No, you would have somebody you approve of. And believe me, I don't care how much you approve of somebody, sooner or later they're going to violate a goal that you have for them. And if you have an unresolved power person dynamic, then your stress is going to elevate. If you're normally Mr. and Ms. Nice Guy, and the way you resisted and survived with your power person was to become Mr. or Ms. Snarky and abusive, then you're going to become Mr. or Ms. Snarky and become abusive with that person that you say, I love you. It isn't love, it's approval. Love is a state of being. It's not something we get from each other, not something we do for each other. It's not something we can give to each other. We can, if we understand, achieve acknowledging and experiencing ourselves as the presence of love. The next pseudo solution is if I could just control everybody and everything. The next one, strain and struggle to make up for a non-being life. Got huge credit card bills? Don't have enough stuff yet to feel like you're valid and worthy? This is the solution. That's the pseudo solution. When the going gets tough, the tough pull out the credit card. When there's this pseudo solution in the carton-based memory feeds, oh, this is what will fix it. This is how I get to feel better. Number 8 pseudo solution, if I could just put my pain deeply enough in my brain's image of you, if I could just blame you deeply enough and convince you that you're the problem in my life, and if you just follow all of my instructions instead of having this insistence that you should have free will and actually be able to make your own choices. You take a look at what, especially in the culture right now, the fear-based so-called Christian nationalists are wanting to do to women. Remove all choices. Get rid of even birth control so you don't even have a choice. Let's not go into the abortion discussion. Take a look at the states where the abortions are most prevalent, and there's states where people are working for $5.25 or $7.25 an hour as a minimum wage. And the conditions are set up by those who say they're pro-life to make sure that people want or need or feel they need abortions. But then look at the next level. What's the commitment of that community in terms of trying to gather power over another? Well, let's take away birth control. It's crazy. It's insane. But they are the games that people play. Next pseudo solution. I think I'll just take the easy way. Forget it. I'm going to stop efforting being decent or good. I'm just going to go on autopilot and do whatever behaviors are in my mind, whatever I'm inclined to do, and, to hell with the results. The next one, to just be right, to prove that I'm not responsible. This pseudo solution involves never even suspecting self is involved in what's going on in the world, and what's going on in their home, and what's going on in their relationships with their children or their parents or their spouses. Never suspecting self, because I'm right and you're the problem. I'm right, you're wrong, it's settled, why argue? That's one of the pseudo solutions. And that was never going to put one in a position where they get to forgive what never belonged within their minds and come back to the state of human life, come back to the state of love. The next pseudo solution is to obfuscate, distract, confuse, switch issues, tell people how they did it too. The next one, leave, escape. One of the ways of leaving or escaping is to deny what's truly going on inside of you. You say to someone, you look like you're upset. What's happening? Oh, I'm not angry. What do we know about that person? Anger is what's going on. If they were at peace, they'd say, I'm at peace. I'm cool. So this leaving, escaping, and pretending that what's true that's going on inside isn't true is a way of leaving, of disappearing oneself. The next one, hostility, or any other drug. This person who holds this is, if I could just anesthetize myself deeply enough, if I could just drink enough alcohol, if I could just smoke enough pot, If I could just express enough rage, if I could just eat enough sugar, then I wouldn't have to feel. And the number one drug of the culture is busyness. Over the years, I present this workshop to people. Why is this happening to me again? It's just they do 5 worksheets a day for the next 40 days. It's Sunday afternoon. By Thursday night, we're doing a 6-day series. By Thursday night, I'll ask, let's say I had an audience of 100 on Sunday. I'll ask those 100, it's probably up to about 150 now. That's kind of how the pattern goes. It tends to grow. And I'll say, how many have done your 5 worksheets a day? I'll be really surprised and delighted if 2 people put their hand up, that they actually follow through with the commitment they were so excited about on Sunday. And when I start asking, well, what happened? Why didn't you do the 5 worksheets you committed to? Oh, I was too busy. Busy is the most common drug going. And hostility is not an emotion. Hostility is a drug. So this is a number 14 pseudo solution. And then the final number 15 is, if I could just give up. That's what I think I'll do. It's hopeless. There's nothing I can do. I'm guilty. I might as well just accept it. They're the pseudo solutions. And not one of those will return one to a state of living as their created essence love. So at this stage in the 14-page worksheet, and we're actually, as we're going, we're doing some editing. So it's not on the website as yet, but it will be. We'll be announcing when it goes up, but we're doing live edits as we go with it. So at this stage, in this step, what you want to do, looking through those 15 different pseudo solutions, is detail specifically which one you're using in this situation. As you become conscious, remember when we started out talking about this worksheet, the first thought in it is to become the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. So when you step back and observe yourself in operation, become cognizant of which pseudo solution is your favorite, which one your mind defaults to. And then you can begin to ferret your way through that. So in this step, I took pseudo solution number. Why did I take it? Why did I go, well, I'm always wrong and they're always right? Why did I do that? Excuse me, my ringer wasn't off on my phone. Well, I guess because I believe that I just, I'm always the one that's at fault. Okay. So then put that in there, because, and I took on, and sometimes there's more than one, so there's room to put in a couple of different pseudo solutions at this step in the worksheet. And as you become more conscious of the mind prompting you, sometimes, the mind, when it serves up something destructive, always serves it up on a platter with a little bit of honey. Like, see, this will work. This is what, if you can just convince them, well, yes, I know I've been through this painful reality 87 different times with 42 different people, but if I could just convince them this time that it really is their fault that I'm feeling this, then everything will be okay. Liar, liar, pants on fire. That is never going to work. It's not even conceivable that it will work. When you become conscious of the pseudo solutions that you use, then and only then can you start to give them up. So that's step 4 of the pseudo solution worksheet, the Power Person Worksheet. So number 5. Here, I want to determine the exact goal and the motivation behind that goal that's driving my perception. This is one of the most critical components of healing. And the reason for that, we talked about this before, but it's a process of building brain cells. In order for your mind, what you call your mind, To produce an integrated reality, you've got to have settled in brain cells sufficient energetic patterns that match that reality, that your mind can build it and sustain it. In the early phases of doing this work, you'll oftentimes run across a situation where, let's say, I'll say a certain thing, you'll hear it, and you go, oh, yeah, that's it. And you go to write it down, you go, I can't even remember what it was. What just happened? Well, that's part of building the brain cells. You can't sustain what you don't have solidly planted in brain cells yet. So in the early stages of getting and grasping, comprehending these energetic dynamics firing in the mind that allow the mind to support us seeing what's happening, have to become solidly fixed, which means you have to hear them over and over and over again. And you have to hear them in different contexts until the mind can really serve that up. And the reason the goal is so important, you'll remember, we'll repeat it again, and you'll hear me repeat it again. And some people go, oh, I don't need to hear that again. If your mind is ever going to produce a solid reality that conflicts with the power person dynamic inherited through your genes and reinforced in your family or cultural system, if your mind is ever going to support you breaking through that, you've got to build the brain cells for how to do it differently. It's just part of the process. And many people get very excited about this work and like, oh, this is great. I love it. I'm going for it. And then it's like, don't make me look, don't make me deal with what's coming up. So remember the Harvard research, it says that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the maximum amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. That 9 bits is the construct of your mind, your perception, that shows you a whole world that you think is out there, but is really nothing but a construct of your mind. If that construct of your mind is serving you up one of the pseudo solutions as a behavior prompt, forcing you to do that behavior, and how many have ever done something against your own will and choice? The last time you did it, you said, man, I'm never going to do that again. And then what happened the next time the stress was up and the chips were down? You did it again. So you've got to be able to collapse those constructs in the mind. How do you do it? You've got to determine exactly the goal that's driving that process. This is a critical component of healing. The whole perceptual construct, the whole painful experiences as a result of fear or hostility resonated by the event and the fact that I have a goal for whoever's involved in this situation to do something. So in order to, and there can be an avoidance goal that people look at. Let's say somebody yelled at me, and and so I use the goal. I look at the goal of, well, I wanted them to speak to me gently, and that's a valid goal, and that's probably applies, but that isn't the issue that's going on. You've got to determine what the goal is around the issue that you're working with. Oh, what I really wanted was for them to respect me. Now, the difference between night and day of those two goals is the difference between night and day. One of them will produce a little bit of a gentling of your perception, but the other goal will bring healing to what underlies it. So in any given situation, it's so important to use the right goal in this worksheet and as well on the reality management forgiveness worksheet. So in order to gain clarity and identify the exact goal, you ask yourself the question, if I were to state the ideal outcome in this situation, what would it be? So you got someone who's yelling at you, and when you really start looking at what you want, it's like, well, I wanted them to really be there for me and fully pay attention to me. And then you'll remember we've got a worksheet which after you've identified the goal, then there's a so that I. And so I wanted them to really be there, fully paying attention to me, so that I feel valuable. Ah, okay. So now the forgiveness process in that situation is going to be to cancel the goal for them to be there for you fully, to cancel the goal for them to fully pay attention to you, and to cancel the goal for yourself to be valued by someone else. Those goals canceled will allow you to drop into the unconscious part of your mind that needs to be cleaned up around those issues. So, you look at what's going on. I mentioned a few minutes ago the whole game that's being played by the so-called Christian national movement. It's anything but Christian. What is it? Well, in a general way with that particular issue is for women to be subservient. Why? So that I can feel in control. That's a weakling pretending to have strength. Can't allow another person to have their own choices. That's weakness masquerading as strength. That's someone with an underlying need to be in control. And the day that you have someone who wants to remove control and will not allow liberty to those around them, that's the day you're facing a monster. So other things might look like, well, I want them to listen so that I feel heard. A variation on that, the same, I want them to listen might be the goal, but it might be so that I get support from what I need. So there are a lot of variations, and you want to really start to pay attention to your mind, because it's only when you find a matching frequency, the matching energy with the goal, that you're actually going to be able to collapse the pained perception. And by collapsing it, what happens when a construct in the mind is collapsed because you've identified the correct goal and you cancel that goal? Remember, in the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag. It means to cancel. So when you cancel that goal, the driver for that pain perception gone, that pain perception collapses and it drops into the underlying dynamic. You remember Carl Jung says, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is how you make the unconscious conscious. Find me another tool. It isn't out there, folks. You got to breathe. And you've got to cancel the goal that drives the pained perception if you're ever going to make your unconscious conscious. And what happens when you cancel the goal and you hit just the right frequency, the right energy, that whole structure that the mind is showing you that you call your pained story about them and how it's all their fault, that whole thing's going to collapse in on its own footprint. And if you're breathing and you're paying attention and love is present in your mind, remember in step 4 in the reality management sheet, you bring love present. What's going to happen is you're going to see what's going on in your own unconscious. You're going to see the dynamic that has been unconsciously running you. Again, go to the ancient scriptures. They understood. What did they say? Take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. Everybody's trying to take care of everybody else instead of dropping into their own hearts. And that word heart in our modern language today would be the unconscious. So other variations on the theme, the goal might be, well, I just wanted him to cooperate. Why? Well, it might be so that I feel valuable. It might be so that I can feel heard. It might be so the job gets done. Each of those things is going to be a different forgiveness process. So the examples I'm offering here are so that you see that the root goal and identifying the deeper dynamics are what I need to become cognizant of and be able to work through. The more precise the identification of the goal, the deeper the healing process is going to be. So the next step was to the need or the goal I was attempting to achieve with my behavior was. So and there are some variation, lots of variations there. I wanted to be cherished or esteemed. I wanted to be safe. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to win. I wanted to be honored. I wanted to have sex. I wanted to stay sane. I wanted to survive. I wanted to feel fulfilled. These are all the kinds. This is to give people an idea of what kind of goals they may be holding that they're unconscious of. Might be the need to have power, to be respected, to belong. Might be the need for acceptance. Might be the need to express, to be approved of, to be acknowledged. These are all different underlying dynamics that motivate us to create goals that when we have an addictive need for any of these things, to be appreciated, to be in control, when we have an addictive need for that, there's pain underneath the surface that needs to be resolved. Some of the other needs behind it might be to have food, to survive, to experience love, to express love, to get cooperation, to have prosperity, to feel powerful. Might be the dynamic of self-betterment. So at this stage in the worksheet, you want to detail the specific goal that you're holding in that situation. And that's the completion of step 5 in the worksheet. And that's such an important key and such an important dynamic. What I'd like to do is just open the question, if that's making sense or if that's not making sense. That's really what I'm interested in. And if any of that didn't connect or wasn't consistent, then I'd invite you to put a comment in with a question. What wasn't clear? Do we need a deeper explanation, or was that sufficient? And or if you have something around this issue, I don't want to get off on other topics. What we're working to do is to create a series of radio shows where someone who wants to tap into, we haven't published this worksheet publicly. It's only ever been offered to people who've done the Codependence to Interdependence Intensive because it's so detailed. So we're working to create a series of radio shows that are solely focused on this worksheet so that in the future we're planning on publishing it, making it available as everything else is, and having these as a way of explaining. So if you've got a question on target for what we're talking about, then please put your thought in the comment or push the caller button and say hello. And if not, then I'm going to just continue. It looks like we don't have any questions or thoughts. So that's up to step 5 on the worksheet. Step 6, you want to identify how you anesthetize yourself. Anesthetics are used to shut down awareness of thought disorders and or hide seemingly unresolvable emotions or pain. The number one way people hide from themselves is through denial. Again, our definition in this work of denial is the act of thinking or speaking, and it's so automatic for people. Over and over, you'll hear it on the radio show, and someone will be talking along, and it'll just slip into the conversation like it's natural to say, and it's like, yeah, and that just frustrated me so much. Excuse me, person who thinks that frustrated you. You're in denial. That's the language of denial. If you're frustrated, and people say, well, I'm frustrated about this. No, you're not frustrated. I'm angry about that. No, you're not angry about that. I'm hateful because they. None of that is true. That's all the language of denial. And when we speak or think as though something outside of us is the cause of what's moving, that made me really mad. Nothing has ever made you mad in your life. That's a lie. If you're mad because there's mad in you. But if you tell your mind to show you that your mad is caused from outside of you, they made me mad, then your mind has to literally cut you off from the truth of what your anger is about. And by doing that, you've created for yourself an unconscious mind. That's the problem in our world today. It is, I would offer, and I don't know how many psychologists or psychiatrists would agree with me. They probably have to spend a little time working with this work. It is totally unnatural for a human being to have an unconscious mind. It's a totally artificial creation of our denial. If we were fully functioning as natural human beings, we would have access to every energetic pattern stored within us, everything, at any time we choose to turn our attention to it. But all you have to do is start to talk to someone about an issue around which they have denial and watch how quickly they hold their breath. And that holding of the breath is how the information is shut down and we create an unconscious. You talk to psychologists today, psychiatrists, and they'll tell you that 80, 90, 95, perhaps as much as 98% of our so-called thinking is unconscious. That means 98% for the person who's in that state, 98% of what's going on in their mind is totally and completely in an unnatural condition. And that's how much healing is going to have to be done. So denial is the beginning point of every deeply destructive cycle of false perception. Why destructive? Destructive because to believe it, you have to lose awareness of your human life. You can't function as love and hide something from yourself, pretend it's not yours, and blame everybody else for it. The beginning point of every deeply destructive cycle of false perception is denial. Denial means I have to hide the truth to hallucinate a lie. Whenever I'm speaking about how that upset me, I'm now instructing my mind to hide the truth about that from me, and I'm hallucinating a lie. So denial results in dissociation, the hiding by the mind of the truth in order that I can believe my hallucinated lie. They made me mad. They made me sad. Now, maybe there's that particular person that every time you're around them, you're mad or you're sad, but that doesn't mean they made you that way. You, if you're ever going to heal that particular form of mad, have to own it and stop the pretense that it's about them. So denial means I hide something, I dissociate, I live in a lie. And the lie is going to be that I'll take the very information that I've relegated to my unconscious that I don't want to use or don't want to look at or own, and I'll use that information to build my brain's image of them, and I'll project that content into my brain's image of them. And that picture, that image is painted on the inside of my eyeballs, and I really believe that I'm looking at something outside of me. And then the cycle's completed when I externalize that perceptual image, pretending that what I see is actually outside of me. Yeah, that really is them. You ever have somebody accuse you of saying something, of doing something you absolutely never did, never said, never even thought? Yeah, you have, haven't you? What state was the person in when they accused you of that? I guarantee you it was some form of hostility or fear. So this misdirection where the mind generates false perceptual constructs hides the truth, and it seems to protect me from my self-induced pain. The problem is the pain remains. This mechanism of projection is somewhat like an anesthetic in that while not covering the pain altogether, it directs my mind to put my pain into my brain's image of another. So here I am feeling the pain, but I don't have to face it internally because I've projected it, and now I believe that they're the cause of my pain. And in that state, there is no recovery except collapsing that false image. What's it called when you collapse a false image in your mind? It's called forgiveness. But those pseudo solutions sneak in and convince us, if only I could do this. So if you're avoiding facing your internally generated pain, then change is impossible. So The cost of this pretense game, the cost of this cycle of denial, dissociation, and projection is everything. It's literally our human lives. This denial cycle and the anesthetics can appear to be pseudo solutions. They seem to solve our problems. Look, I can see that it's all their fault. Well, yeah, I'm still feeling this pain, but look, I'm convinced it's all their fault. Boy, there's a pseudo solution. Have you ever seen one? It seems to solve the problem of self-responsibility, but the pain's still going on. What's happened in this cycle of denial is I put the pain into my brain's image of them. I still feel it, but I'm convinced. How do I tell whether or not something I'm feeling is mine or not? I'm feeling it. The truth is, if I'm in pain, if I'm in lack, if I'm in some form of suffering, if I've got some kind of conversation going on about something outside of me, I'm hiding that pain inside of me. The same thing let's say there's something really horrific, terrible. There's lots of crazy stuff going on. Let's say something horrific and terrible going on in the world right now. And you say, and that really is such a disturbance to me. Stop your lying. Stop pretending that that's the reason this energy of turmoil is in your tissue structure. How do you tell whether or not something you're feeling is yours or not? You're feeling it. If I'm in pain, my thinking is in error, and I have healing work to do. So when denial and anesthetics compromise intelligence and numb us to the warning signals of pain that would otherwise inform us, what's the purpose of pain? It's to make your ears grow. The only person who needs this conversation is somebody who's in pain. Trying to get them to listen, build the brain cells for, oh, I'm feeling it, it's mine. What a revolutionary idea. So if we numb ourselves to the warning signals that would inform us of what we're doing to ourselves, that just complicates the challenges. It intensifies the need for self-correction, and it multiplies the difficulty of engaging in truth, of ever having access to truth. So the mind energy behind these pseudo solutions create literal aberrant physiological disturbances, conditions, chemistry in the cellular structure that produces diseases. It produces mental constructs and perceptions that block truth. And this is the greatest of all human foibles. Now, external addiction becomes tempting when the internal chemistry of the current pseudo solution is not working effectively to shut down what I'm trying to avoid feeling. So if my denial alone isn't enough, that's when somebody has this compulsion. And they've got all kinds of stories. Well, pot never hurt anybody. Pot's a good thing. I feel better. A few drinks after work and, I can relax. Well, if you need drinks to relax, if you need to anesthetize yourself, maybe you want to remove the toxin you're anesthetizing against. Maybe you want to remove the poison so that all you do is you sit down, you take a breath, and you relax. But if a pseudo solution is not working effectively to shut down what I'm attempting to avoid feeling, that's when people turn to addiction. So if you've got somebody doing addiction, see if you can help them to understand the driving goal underneath the surface. And if even for an instant you can convince them to let go of that goal, if even for an instant you can get them to be out of their minds, the healing process will happen. Again, of anesthetics and addictions, being busy is the most common. And they use to hide stress under the pretense of managing stress. Ultimately, denial and addictions do nothing but create and reinforce us living an unconscious life. If you want to have an unconscious life, you got to wake up. Isn't it interesting that we're living in a culture right now where being awake is called woke and there's something wrong with you actually care enough about people to be concerned to rather than just being able to accept it because well they're different from me so it doesn't matter. And the culture, I mean, how far from sanity has it gone? It is now a crime to be awake in the minds of so many people. So ultimately, denial and addictions do nothing but create and reinforce living an unconscious life. This worksheet is designed to step out of an unconscious life and step into becoming conscious. And by the way, our definition in this work of an addiction is a compulsive use of any anesthetic. That is, compulsive use of any person, place, circumstance, substance, situation, or activity to avoid listening to my highest guidance and or to keep me from feeling and dealing with stress of any kind, to keep me from feeling and dealing with my emotions. What these behaviors do is they dull awareness, shut down contact with one's own thought processes. So the thought disorders that pain is inviting us to look at and change, things that we just accept, well, this is just the way it is. No, bad energy in your structure is going to cause you pain. Pay attention to it. So an idea of what those addictions might look like. Let's use an example. Oh, I don't need to feel my pain if I hang out with Bill, who keeps me laughing. Well, hanging out with Bill is going to probably become an addiction for this person. If I don't have to feel what's going on inside of me when I'm around this person, if somebody keeps me entertained enough, why would I want to do that? If there's pain in me, that pain is my invitation that says there's something going on you need to deal with. If you don't deal with it, then sooner or later, you're going to be looking at it as some form of degeneration. Degeneration is not natural to the human system. Or when I have a rough day at work, the world just fades away after I have 6 drinks. You don't want the world fading away. You want to maintain as sharp a mind as you can to go inside and look at what's going on. Oh, I get so absorbed in the TV, I just forget about my life. Or to me, one of the most tragic ones in the culture today, we hear about these kids cutting themselves. If I inflict enough pain on myself, I will not have to deal with this uncontrollable pain that's going on within me. I I just avoid connection because it reminds me of my pain. All of those things can be thoughts that describe addictive behaviors. So if one's in a state of fear or hostility, the next step here in the codependence worksheet is, whatever the particular tactic or behaviors that I'm doing, the pseudo solution that I'm using, the thing that I do that I or others don't like, and then we've come up with a whole list of them. By the way, when you start working with the worksheet, if you have any things to add, there are 2 or 3 lists in it. I went through one a few minutes ago. There are 2 or 3 lists. If you come up with any that we've missed, I'd definitely appreciate, and we will add to it. So this part of the uh, worksheet has just a list of and check boxes beside it, so you can look at and really identify what behaviors you perhaps do that you can deem addictions. And so there's a checkbox for that. And then the second thing you will ask you to do with this list is to identify first and then circle. So there's a checkbox for the things you've caught yourself doing, and then circle the tactics that you've observed your power person do. And then a third thing to do with this list, and I'm just going to kind of quickly jump through the list. The third thing to do, so there's a checkbox. I do these behaviors. Circle if you observed your power person doing it. And then underline any behavior that your partner says that you do. You may deny it, you may pretend you don't, and maybe you don't, but underline what your partner says you do. And each time you go through it, you'll see patterns emerging that will help you to become more and more conscious. So what are these behaviors? Deny, blame, dissociate, project, dissociate and yell, dissociate and scream, dissociate and use the voice. Everybody knows what the voice is, right? Be cute, coy, use distraction, gaslight, plain lie, be insincere or deceptive, false religiosity, criticism, either self or others, degrade, either self or others, be covert, convey a different message with my voice tone than with my words, leave, escape, run away, go numb. Going numb is a way of leaving. Greed, become a self-absorbed. False pride, turn to entertainment. Need to be right, make excuses. Avoid emotions by staying in my head, intellectualizing, being unwilling to look within. Dish out your daily dose of disapproval of self or others. Being unfair or unkind. Envy, cheat, attack, destroy, get even, vengeance, steal. These can all be addictive behaviors. And we're now at the cutoff point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create an overlap and pick this list up again tomorrow because there's quite a bit more to go through what these behaviors are. So I'm just going to say thank you for joining us. I hope this has been useful, and create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Bye-bye.